Alright guys, so you've probably already seen the introduction video because I am now on to episode 1. So, how I'm going to do this series is basically I'm going to like flip back and forth. So, I'm going to do one episode on like anxiety, depression, mental health issue, and then I'm going to flip back to an episode on body image issues. Those are like the two main things I want to cover, and those are how I'm going to do it. So I've basically created like a list of the things I want to talk about. So each like episode I'm going to have like a specific topic. But how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do an introduction to the mental health side of my issues, and then I'm going to do an introduction into the body image issues that I've had and still are working on. So today's episode will be my basically my experience with depression and anxiety, and we'll go from there. So now that it's kind of hard to think about because it's just been, I've had it for so long and like it's such a closed off part of me. So the more I wrote a post and I was explaining about when I first had my first anxiety attack. And when I did the introduction video, I basically was like, yeah, I think I started having anxiety and depression around 15. I would say more the depression around 15, but I'd say the anxiety definitely started much earlier. Because, as I said, I did have my first full-blown anxiety attack at 12 when my brother had broken his arm. So for me, I'd say the anxiety started very early. It could have been even earlier. Honestly, I can't really remember. I do remember racing when I was younger, like really young, maybe even 11, and I was having problems with anxiety. But at that time, I didn't know what it was, so I thought it was just asthma. So I remember we went to the doctor, and I was like, yeah, I'm having trouble breathing, and when I race, I get all I can't breathe, and I'm pretty sure I got a ventilator, because they just gave me one for my asthma. And then it kept happening with racing, so it wouldn't happen during practices. I'd be fine. I would be exerting myself to a new level. The moment I would do a race, I would basically choke in the middle of the race, and I would get to a point where I was like, oh, I couldn't breathe, and then I would blame it on my anxiety. My asthma, because I didn't know what this was at the time. I was 11 years old, and so I remember one race specifically. It was regionals, which was a pretty big event when you're 11, and I was doing a 100-meter butterfly, and it was a 50-meter pole, so you do 2 laps. And I remember I did the 1 lap, and then I just stopped, and I just got out there because I couldn't breathe, and I thought I was having an asthma attack, and I thought I was dying, and they happened a few times. And so that was kind of when it first happened in swimming, and I guess when it really first started happening in my life. And then the one I explained in my Instagram that you guys saw is when my brother broke his arm, and this was the worst one and the one that I remember really, really vividly. And I was even talking to my sister Laura about it, and I was like, do you remember that day? And she was like, yeah, that was very, it was in a very intense day, and she remembers it crystal clear too, because when you have that kind of a traumatic event in your life and you remember it almost it plays back in your head like a movie, it's so you remember it all. And I remember he broke his arm, and I started getting really worried, and I was hyperventilating, crying and freaking out. And then I just remember not being able to breathe, and I had never experienced it to this magnitude, because when I was swimming I would just blame it on my asthma, and I was it was more I'm having trouble breathing, but this is the point I could not breathe. And I remember crying, and I was lying in my basement floor, and I was screaming and yelling. And I remember telling my dad, you need to call 911. I can't breathe. I'm dying. And you're 11, 12 years old, and you're having this experience. It's scary. If I have an anxiety attack now, I'm scared. And I remember lying on the floor, and he's like, no, Victoria, you're talking, which means you can breathe. Because you're talking, you can breathe. And I remember my sister was holding my hand and, helping me breathe. And she was deep breaths and everything. And, I literally thought that was the day that I was going to die. And if you guys have experienced that, you know how freaking scary it is. And, yeah, that was when the anxiety really started. And from there, it kind of just progressed. And the anxiety attacks, they just kind of happen whenever. mainly swimming. So it was something like, swimming was like a triggering when I raced, because I put so much pressure on myself. I'm a very like, I'm like type A personality, like perfectionist. Like I put so much, I work very hard at things and I expect to see a return of that work in things. So when I would race, I would put a lot of pressure on myself, and that pressure would cause me to have so much anxiety to the point that I would literally be in the middle of a race and I would have to stop. But at this point, I blamed it on asthma. I had an excuse, It was like, yeah, like everyone understood. I was like, yeah, I've got bad asthma. I would be in the middle of a race. I would have a full-on panic attack and I would just stop in the middle of a race. And it was embarrassing. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Like, you're 12, 13, 14 years old and you're stopping in the middle of the race. And at this time, it's like a very impactful moment of your life when you're going from like 12 to 14 and you're maturing and you're hitting puberty and everything starts to get so dramatic and everything means so much to you, and people's opinion at that point is like escalated and you think it's like that's the most important thing. And then I was having this happen to me and I didn't know what to do about it. And I remember I went to a sports psychologist, I went to a freaking hypnosis, I did counseling, like everything for this, and nothing really helped. Some days when my anxiety was down and I could race and perform really well, and then other times it was very unpredictable. So that's kind of how the anxiety started with me. And the anxiety also was a very kind of an avoidance type of anxiety. So I would avoid things that were responsibility. Like if I, even now I struggle, like if I have to go do something or pay something, I'm like, I avoid it to like last possible minute because I get anxiety about it. So instead of going and doing it right now to relieve the anxiety, I actually make the anxiety way worse because I avoid and avoid and avoid to the point that it builds up so much. And it was like that, and it was anxiety, I just lost my train of thought. But mainly it was that, the swimming anxiety. I would think I'm a overthinker, and when I would get anxiety, I would get one thing in my head, and it was like analyze and analyze. And I remember I was like 11 years old, okay, maybe 12, and my friend had got her first bra, and for some reason, like I had serious anxiety about this bra, and like for a whole week straight, all I thought about was a bra, like, and I was like ashamed that she got a bra, because like I didn't get a bra, I didn't have boobs yet. I was like, well, why don't I have boobs yet? Like she got a bra, and like I just fixated on this. And the same thing when I was like really young, when I found out when my best friend's older sister had sex for the first time, and I was like, I had such anxiety with this. I was like, oh my god, like eventually I'm gonna have to do this. Oh my god, and like I would freak out. And it like kind of consumes you to the point where like you can't stop thinking of it. It's like literally like it's just in your head, in your head, in your head, in your head. And then you usually get physiological things because of it. So that was kind of happened with the anxiety. And then when I was 18 was like the pivotal year for me. I just turned 18. I am going into university for the first time. I'm trying to swim for the varsity team, which is like a big deal for me. So like, it was a big transition going from high school where I was like, did so well in school and like knew how to handle life. I had a great group of friends. I was comfortable. This was my safe zone. And then it was like university was thrown at me and I didn't know how to handle it. And this was bad. Like this was when everything kind of just got really, really bad for me. So it kind of started in September when I couldn't really handle the adjustment and I was having really bad anxiety. I thought I was not going to make it through school. I was really worried about making the swim team. And then from there, I kind of just, because I was so stressed about everything, I started putting on a lot of weight. And then the body image issues came and it was like everything at once. I was having anxiety. I was having all these body image issues. I was putting on weight. I was stressed. And I was dealing with so much. And then it just got really, really, really depressed. And I've had feelings of being depressed when I was younger, probably like 15, 16 in high school. I remember days of feeling really down, but it was never to the point like this. This was something different. And the thoughts I had were scary. And if you've been in a depressed state and you're thinking these things, you know it's scary and you know it's serious. And I got to a point where I was like, it was just, when I think back to that period in my life, literally all I think about is gray and black. I just think about this like dark gray black period of my life because that's what it was like. And I remember having thoughts I couldn't control. I remember having no motivation to do anything. and crying, just uncontrollably crying all the time and feeling so, so sad. And fortunately, I have parents and a support system I'm able to go to. And I remember going to my mom and I was like, Mom, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And this is when I went and saw a psychologist, like an actual psychiatrist for the first time. And this is really when my life started changing in terms of being able to overcome some of this. It's been a very up and down battle throughout my life, but this was like the first real issue. And this had been gone, I mean, I had been feeling like this for like 3 or 4 months before I finally went to my mom. Like, I hid it for so long, and you know, it was really bad. And when I look back at it, I feel sad that I felt the need and was so embarrassed that I couldn't get help sooner, and that I felt like I needed to hold this in. And that's kind of why I want to do this series, because if you guys get into this point, I want you to get help. I don't want you to wait and pretend that you are normal and try to cover it up and not get help because you're embarrassed, you're ashamed. That's not what I want you to do. You want to get help right away. I mean, you need to be living your life to your fullest, and that kind of a life, that's not living. It's just dark times. And when I went to, we did a lot of therapy. I was seeing him quite frequently at the start. We did a lot of like CBT, which is like cognitive behavioral therapy. And I was at a point where it was like, I needed medication. I wasn't going to get out of this myself. It was too far down, and I was too far gone to get to a point where I would be able to get out of it myself. And it was a very, I was in a very, 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 very low point in my life. And I mean, people who say they contemplate, people don't really understand. I think people don't understand suicide and things like that, because people, when they see the people who've committed suicide, they think it's a very selfish act. But I can speak from my personal experience that when you're in that kind of darkness and deep place, you're not thinking about other people, and you're not thinking about how that's going to help, that's going to affect the people. You're honestly thinking that, like, you cannot live one more day. And you're also thinking that, to be honest, you think the world is going to be a better place without you, because you think that you're that much of a burden and that you're that unworthy of living, that you think you don't deserve life. And I mean, I remember one time I was talking to someone, and they had someone who committed suicide, and they were saying how selfish this person is to just give up on their life, and I think that's what they don't get, is that person's not selfish. That person was in a very deep, dark place. They needed help. They didn't get help. And they did something that they thought would be the best thing for everyone around them and themselves. And when you're in that place, you're not thinking like, I'm gonna hurt my parents and they're not gonna be able to live their life because they're losing me. You're not. And that's the thing. And once you get to that kind of a place where you consider that, you're in a very bad place, and you need to get help right away, and you need to go and talk to someone, and don't be ashamed to talk to someone. Like, I've never told people this. You think I go around and tell people I've been to a point where I was suicidal? Of course not. Because you're going to think I'm crazy, right? But who freaking cares? I don't give a shit. Because if what I'm saying right now can help one person, because they get to a point in their life and they're like, I remember watching Victoria's video, and when she got to a point like that, she went and got help. I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And I'm able to get to a point where I can talk about this and not get emotional, not cry, not get worked up. Because for a long point, if I was trying to talk about these things, I would just break down. I couldn't do it. And I'm so much stronger. I'm like able to like handle my emotions and just say it without breaking down. And that to me is like, that's growth. So that kind of is where depression was for me, and where it really started. And I went on medication, and I'm going to do a whole episode on antidepressants and my experience, the kind of medication I use, side effects, everything to deal with everything you need to know with antidepressants. But that's kind of like how depression started. And since then, it's been a very up and down battle for me. I would say third year university, I got into a really bad spell as well. I had just stopped swimming. I decided I was done with swimming because I could not handle it. Like, I could never hack the mental part of it. I never was able to overcome that performance anxiety. So I would race literally, like, my racing was just horrible. And I was ashamed and embarrassed because I trained so hard and I could keep up with all these girls and I was beating these girls in practices, and I get to a race and I just bomb it. And I'm letting people down because when you're on a team and everyone's stuff matters, like, I just felt like a freaking failure, and I felt like a failure every fucking day to the point that I couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, I'm here busting my ass 5 hours a freaking day, and I am a failure because I cannot race, and I'm letting this person down. I'm embarrassing myself, and every meet I would just be crying and emotional, and it was just so bad. And I remember I went and saw my psychiatrist and I was like, yeah, I'm done swimming. And he was proud of me because sorry. He was proud because he was like, you got to a point where you were able to see that, like, you this isn't healthy for you. Swimming's not healthy. Like, that to me was like, swimming was everything to me, and I gave up something that was my world to better myself. And he was like, yeah, it's hard to think back to it because it was so hard at the time. I guess I haven't quite got past this emotional part. But yeah, it was really hard at the time. I'm sorry, guys, but I was holding a front, but that part, I guess I haven't quite dealt with this part yet. It's coming out. So I stopped swimming. I had done swimming for 12 years. It was literally one of the most important things in my life, so I stopped the swimming, and because I couldn't do it mentally. I remember I just had gone out of a relationship then too, and I had done it very badly. Like, I had gone out in a really stupid way. I was not in a good place. And this is when I started drinking a lot. And drinking at this point it was a way to pretend I wasn't going through these things. It was a way to just forget about my worries, and it was an escape. And to me, I was drinking probably 4 or 5 nights a week, going out, and just doing things that weren't characteristic of who I was as a person, and weren't characteristic of the person I want to be. And so I did this for about 3 or 4 months, and then it got to a point where fitness, actually, like, working out and stuff, was like the thing that saved me, because I started doing weight training and stuff. And once I was weight training, I started falling in love with weight training, and I decided, if I want to be good in this weight training, if I want to be in shape, I need to stop drinking. And that was what pulled me out of the drinking escape type phase. And I can't drink now because it's the same thing. I find I get such a high from the drinking, and then the low from the next day is just like, I can't deal with it mentally, so I don't drink. But at this point, I wouldn't really let myself get to the low, I would just drink again. But yeah, so fitness in this sense actually saved my life, because it allowed me to get out of that dark space again and to fill my life with something positive. So I was like eating healthy and working out and finally doing something good for myself. And that's kind of how competing started for me. And competing was an extremely positive thing for me for a very long time. Like, it got me out of a lot of dark times because it made me, again, escape the things I had to think about, because I was putting my energy into something else. And what I think is so different about me now than when I was then is that right now I don't need to work out to escape myself, and I don't need to go out and drink to escape myself. I'm able to sit here, express myself, be okay with myself, and that to me is the point I'm at, and the point I really hope every one of you gets to. But yeah, so that was kind of how I got into fitness and how that happened. And I haven't depression's, it's such an up and down thing. Like I mean, I was in a good place then, and then, you know, 6 months later I was in a bad place again. And at this time I was trying to come off antidepressants, and I was off for a little bit and I was doing okay, and then, you know, I spiraled back into depression. I had to get back on medication. I was then trying to find the right medication for me, and it was not a good place again. And I think there's only really been about maybe 5 or 6 really bad like phases of depression. Like I'll go into maybe like a 2-week kind of state, but like when I talk about really bad, I mean like to the point I was at rock bottom. And I do know that seeing a therapist, having a supportive family, taking medication, working out, all these things has been what has helped me overcome all these struggles. And guys, I honestly, like, I can't tell you, like, the more I talk about these things, the better I feel. It's honestly like a therapy session with myself, because when you guys know, if you're feeling this way, you know how long you've held these things in for. Like, how long have you held these things in for? A long fucking time. And now you're finally expressing them. It's like every time I express something and I say something out loud that I've never said out loud, or just said out loud to my psychiatrist, it's like I have weight coming off my shoulders, because I've like never ever said these things. And yeah, it feels really good. And even today I was at a show, and I mean, I used to go to these shows and everyone would come up to me and just be like, oh my god, like, I follow you, you look so good. Like, that was the conversation. People came up to me today and were like, I follow you, like, the stuff you're doing is making an impact on my life, it's changing my life. Like, that to me is what I want to do. And I don't care to show as much of me as I have to, because it's going to help so many people. And I don't really know what else I'm saying, but that's basically my story with depression, with anxiety, and kind of how it all started. And I just hope you guys have some insight into it if you don't experience it. And there's one piece of advice I want to give you, is that if you are someone who struggles, focus on working on yourself. I know when I'm in a very depressed state, I'm not a nice person. I'm so angry at myself for feeling these ways, at the world, and that kind of energy and aurora, like, it's gonna, like, it rubs off on people. And if you're not honest with the people around you that you suffer from these problems and you have these problems, it's gonna create a lot of problems in your relationships. So you need to be able to accept these things, be open about these things, talk to people about these things, and it's gonna change your life. Really, it is. Like, you're gonna feel so much better. It's like, I mean, I can't speak on someone, but who was I talking to? I don't know, but it's like, let's say your whole life you've kept this secret in, which essentially you kept this secret in, and it's taken every little bit of you to hold this secret in, to put this front on, to pretend you're a normal person on days you don't want to move, to force yourself to get out of bed and put your face on and be this happy person, because that's what you gotta be. And then you finally, you know, you've been faking it for so fucking long, and you finally can be yourself. Like, your life's gonna change. And I can promise you that, because my life has changed just by doing those things. So, episode 1 on my introduction to depression, anxiety, and stay tuned for more content. And I can't promise you I'm not going to get, like, worked up in these episodes. Obviously that was a point that I have not addressed yet. So yeah, stay tuned, guys, and thank you for watching. Bye.